Everything just went way up in the air, taller than the nearest column. I was wondering about my son. I figured with that many people up there, there was an excellent chance he was up there somewhere too. And I was right, unfortunately.
The midnight explosion at the Tesoro oil refinery last April was devastating. 4 workers were killed instantly. 3 died later. Paul Gumbel's son Matt held on for 22 days. Oil refining is a dangerous business, but sometimes it's more dangerous than it has to be.
Probably the worst thing is finding out that it could have been stopped. That it very, very likely could have been and should have been prevented.
After the accident that killed Matt Gumbel, regulators found that for 12 years, the company had not run proper safety tests on the piece of equipment that failed.
This incident, this explosion, and these deaths were preventable.
State regulators cited Tesoro for 44 safety violations at its Anacortes refinery and slapped the company with a proposed $2.4 million fine.
The tests that should have been done on it should have been done 2 years ago, and they weren't. Maybe my brother would still be alive if they had.
Tesoro declined to be interviewed on camera, but in a statement disputed the state's findings, calling them deeply flawed. Incidents like the Anacortes fire are more common than many think. The Center for Public Integrity has found that when it comes to dangers at refineries, enforcement is inconsistent, the industry resists fixes, and companies can delay penalties or get them reduced. Industry officials say safety is paramount.
Absolutely nothing, and I underscore the point, absolutely nothing is more important to us than workplace safety. Besides being the right thing to do, promoting safety makes good business sense.
But Tesoro machinist and union leader Steve Gary doesn't buy it.
Every time the executives come from Texas to talk to us, they emphasize the importance of returning maximum value to the shareholders. They don't spend what they should to stay safe.
Matt Gumbel had come back to his hometown, Oak Harbor, Washington, just a few years before the accident.
Things were starting to look good for him. He got one of the cars he dreamed about, bought himself a house. He was pretty much on top of the world.
The night of the accident, Matt was working the graveyard shift. After the explosion, he managed to stumble away.
The story was that he had gotten himself up somehow, then walked himself to their control room and shelter.
When we saw him, and I walked out, and I looked at Paul and I said, "You didn't tell me he was that bad." He said, "I couldn't."
Most of his head was bandaged, although you could see his eye area and part of his nose area and his lips.
It's really a disturbing thing to see, knowing that that's your child. We were having a hard time with it. You know, it's really one of the most difficult things for me was trying to keep a straight face and a fairly calm outward appearance, so people wouldn't think we were completely devastated, even though we really were.
He had 8 surgeries in 3 weeks. And then, all of a sudden, he started swelling.
An infection had already taken over.
Paul and I walked out in the waiting room, and he just sat there for a minute, and he said, "I know you're right, but I don't want to lose him." I said, "Neither do I. But he wouldn't want to live like this."
Tesoro is appealing the state citations and says it is looking forward to clarifying the facts as the process unfolds.
What? No.
Getting on with life has been hard for the Gumbel family. Some of Matt's ashes were spread at a state park near their home.
And this is one of his favorite places, and this is the best view. Up here, you can see the islands, the ferries, sometimes going through there. I thought he deserved a good view.
I'm not the same person I was on April 1st, 2010. And I never will be. We never will be.
Paul tried to go back to the refinery, but then a boiler backfired. It was just a loud noise, but Paul was shaken. So he was transferred to the Tesoro garage, away from the heart of the refinery.
It makes me and everybody else out there wonder what else is out there waiting for them. I mean, it's a good paying job, but is it worth your life?